Hello and welcome. I'm Yvonne Chan in Singapore and you're watching FIA Dialogues. Thank you for joining us for today's second FIA Dialogues edition, where we discuss latest trends, challenges, and opportunities in the food and beverage industry. This morning's hour-long live stream looked at reformulation, and in this edition, the subject is one that's close to everyone's heart: wellness and immunity. FIA Dialogues editions stream at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. over 3 days, so 6 dialogues titles in all. There's more information on our FIADialogues.com website, and simply post questions for our live Q&A session directly on the YouTube chat box to the right-hand side. And that's coming up in about 30 minutes' time. Our expert panel will endeavor to answer as many of your questions as possible. But before we delve into this topic, you will hear from a number of our industry leaders about their thoughts on the food industry and some of the key issues and challenges as we all navigate these unprecedented times. Finally, we thank our sponsors, Corteva, Danone, Kerry, and Mondelez for their generous support in making this event possible. Let's hear now from Belinda Tumbers, Managing Director, Kellogg's Asia Pacific. Belinda's speaking with FIA Dialogues reporter Greg Ward.
So let's look now at the first question, and that was all about the focus on FMCGs becoming more resilient in a post-COVID world. For you, Belinda, what does resilient even mean?
Really, resilience for me means strength. You know, how a company shows up, how a company operates in the toughest of circumstances. So, you know, COVID certainly challenged what we do and how we do it as a business. I think it made us revisit our operating norms. It made us think in new ways around how we lead, how we operate, the way we connect, and the way we market our brands. We've also had to make sure that our business model remains agile and our supply chain simple, so we can very much adapt to short-term changes in shopper behaviour. And then I think just the final area is around how we've had to lead differently. You know, people are our most important asset within our business. We've had to make sure we connect more regularly, that we over-communicate, we stay engaged, and more importantly, we ensure that employee safety remains the number one priority for us as markets start opening back up again.
Are there any things that haven't changed, though, in terms of what consumers expect?
Look, I think there's a couple of areas that I think have remained post-COVID. The first is that I expect that the health and wellness agenda will continue to gain momentum. I think COVID only amplified that, with people placing much more importance and emphasis on their own personal health. Their own health plus that of the health of their family and friends has been an absolute priority during COVID. And we as a food manufacturer, you know, we've seen consumers switch to better for you products that are more natural, products that deliver strong health benefits. And we're really seeing that functional foods are starting to play more of a role. I think the other area that will remain is digitization. And whilst it's been there for a while, I think the rate at which it will grow will be exponential. So as I mentioned earlier, we've seen e-commerce exploding with consumers shifting from offline to online. And I really don't expect to see that buyer behaviour shifting back to pre-COVID levels anytime soon.
And does that explosion deliver any major challenges for you?
I think it presents challenges in that we need to make sure we've got an e-commerce strategy in place to service that channel. We need to make sure we're resourced accordingly, and we need to make sure that we've got the right plans to ride out that momentum.
Well, let's look at innovation. Innovation, of course, is critical to success. For your brand, what can you tell us about innovation and how you approach it?
Sure. So, you know, I run a business that looks after a brand called Pringles, and innovation for us is a key growth driver. So we know consumers are looking for new flavours, new formats, and new experiences. So it's really important that we meet those consumer needs. As a brand, though, we need to be really agile in our approach, because we need to keep pace with very fast-moving local players across the region who ideate and launch innovation quickly.
even if we look at the next 5 years, can you imagine how food and beverage may evolve over, say, the next 5 years?
Look, I thought about this question a lot, and I think it's hard to answer with any certainty given the unprecedented times that we're in. Obviously, the environment we're operating is very dynamic and will need to evolve to stay relevant. But a couple of areas I think will happen, and that is I do believe that consumers will fall back in love with brands they trust, including big brands. You know, we've seen the rise of the entrepreneur, over the last 5 to 10 years. And whilst I still think startup food companies will exist, I do think there will be a consolidation of players in the industry. So bigger companies, like ours, will look to acquire brands that expand their reach both geographically and also with consumers. I think we'll see a change in the way consumers shop. Consumers are seeking out more channels to source their products from. We've already seen that shift during COVID from bricks and mortar stores to e-com, and that will only continue. I think to be effective in this space, we need to make sure we're resourced appropriately. We have the right offerings to win in different channels with the right level of focus and investment. And then I think the third area is really around sustainability and transparency. That's only going to become even more relevant. Consumers want products that have a positive impact on the environment. They're seeking out brands that really have a purpose that align to their own values. They're wanting transparency on how food is made, what ingredients are in food, where those ingredients are sourced. And I think clean label is really becoming increasingly important for consumers. We're already seeing that today. They're looking for more natural ingredients, cleaner ingredient lists, and products that are free from perceived negatives. We know that plant protein and meat alternatives will continue to rise. More people are going to become flexitarians and meat consumption will decline. Personalization will grow, enabled by technology. So, imagine as a consumer having a dietitian prescribe you a diet online. You then have a meal plan created for you that you use to order ingredients. And then you get home and it's waiting for you to make your meal that evening. That's the future, the personalization aspect. And then I think we're going to see a need for convenience. And with that will come the rise of digital retailers and delivery services. We're already seeing that happen during COVID. We know that online retailers deliver speed of service from warehouse to doorstep from the time of order. And consumers largely want products now to be delivered where they want them and when they need them in real time. And then I think the final area that we're going to see is just new food sources that will emerge. So things such as peas, yeast, algae, and other plant alternatives. There's 30,000 edible plants in the world, and we're only consuming something like 150 of them today. So as food demand becomes an issue, I think we're going to see things shift to using ingredients that are in more and abundant supply.
What are you looking forward to most over the next 12 months?
I'm looking forward to seeing what the new norm looks like after COVID-19. So, there's a lot of work we're doing around what working looks like in the new future. So we're working from home right now, but we see that that's going to become a very viable option for employees to consider moving forward. So, and I'm looking forward to seeing how our brands respond in a recessionary environment. I mean, we're expecting very, very challenging times, but I feel as a company, and particularly for my business unit, that we're very well placed to compete effectively during such a downturn. So I love challenging situations. This has certainly been a year of challenges, and I expect more of that to come. So just looking to see how we as a company respond, and also learning from how other companies respond during that time.
Thank you, Greg. On August 12, we launched 4 episodes of FIA's Food for the Future TV news program, so make sure to watch out for that. And here's a short preview.
Our biggest challenges is actually the new Can Life rollout, and we're focusing on the application of that, the production of that. This is embracing new technology into a very historic area. I mean, sugar production hasn't changed for over 100 years, and so now we're doing things differently, which is interesting. But we're also focusing on the NX powder, and that's this intense nutrient powder that allows us to be able to feed the microbiome. Interestingly, sugars and carbohydrates feed our gut microbiome, and then allow those other benefits from prebiotics and probiotics, and so we're working in those areas, which are exciting.
One missing piece of the puzzle is actually to have a place where the ideas can be tested on a scale up, and it's always this gap in between. You don't want to invest a lot of money into a processing plant before you have proven that it really works.
Recognizing the need for scalability, food industry giants Bühler and Givaudan are collaborating to build an innovation center for plant-based food in Singapore. The facility aims to create sustainable food solutions for a growing Asian market and hand innovators a leg up in the business.
Our second interviewee today is from Tate and Lyle. Here's President, Asia Pacific Food and Beverage Solutions, Harry Boot.
Could you tell me about your mission, improving lives for generations?
Yeah, no, I'd absolutely love to. Well, first of all, I mean, purpose. Our purpose is all about improving lives for generations. And purpose to me is really, what is when your personal purpose is aligned with that of the company, you can move mountains. And if you look at three concrete areas where we're very, very active, and one is healthy living. Right? If you look at diabetes is on the rise dramatically, and we've got solutions to be able to do at least put a dent in those issues by taking sugar out or decreasing calories or fiber fortification are good examples. Then building thriving communities is the second one. And that's all about, for example, like what we did at schools, right, where we're educating smaller kids, because you have to educate these kids when they're young to make sure that they have an idea of what they are putting into their bodies and how much they're actually burning.
How do big brands remain relevant?
Yeah, innovation is really at the center of what we ultimately do. I mean, you're now here doing this interview with me here in Singapore, and we've actually increased the capability of our Singapore office and expanded it 3 times in the last 3 years. And it's all about, ultimately, about innovation. Another example is in Shanghai, we've done exactly the same thing, or in Tokyo. Continuously investing in the innovation piece. And if you think about what we do, taste is absolutely crucial. Right? But taste is ultimately local, right? So you have to ultimately make sure that you're bringing those solutions that the local consumers actually enjoy, because you can bring a great product into the marketplace, but if taste is not there, then it ultimately won't work, right? People will migrate again back to other solutions.
Why has the company specifically decided to invest in this region?
We're in the food business, right? We ultimately are feeding people. So if you think about where you feed people, it's where people are. Right? So look at our region, the Asia Pacific region. If you take 10 random people in the world, 6 of them are in this particular part of the world, 2 of them, of course, in China. So you have to be where the people are, and that's why we've got to keep on investing. Then if you look at diabetes is a tremendous issue, right? 5 or 6 out of the top 10 countries in the world are here with diabetes problems, and the biggest one, of course, being China, with 110 million diabetics. So you got to be where ultimately the issues are, and that's where you invest. You think about food, it stays local, right? I can't develop a soya sauce in Michigan for Harbin in China, right? It just does not work. So you have to be here local to the communities, understanding what the customer wants and what they need, and then you can ultimately provide that solution. That's why you got to invest your expertise over here. If you look at what's happening with COVID-19, right, people are much more, especially in the food service side, you haven't been going a lot to restaurants in the last little while, right? So that segment of the market has been hit really, really hard. So what are they looking for? Ultimately, productivity. How can I save costs? How can I bring better solutions to our customers? So we're now working together with a local player here in Singapore to ultimately increase his productivity of duck, the crispy duck, which I love, by the way, to increase its productivity by 15%, increase the crispiness, and retain that moisture of the actual final product.
You've mentioned environmental targets. Could you tell me how that affects your business?
If I look at the two key challenges with regards to sustainability, one is, of course, climate change, right? Big issue right now in the world, and everybody's got their bit. Two is we're completely reliant actually on natural resources, right? Our business is mainly based on corn, and as a result, we use about 1.5 million acres of land to grow this corn. But we do this in a completely sustainable way, right? So this is not very, very economically friendly. If you look at our stevia business, which is in our sweeteners portfolio, there we partnered together with NGO Earthwatch to again come up with complete, good, sustainable ways of improving the actual how we actually plant those leaves, and we'll be coming up with more results as of next year.
It's great to hear from two of our leaders to better understand the challenges and opportunities that they currently see across the sector. It's time for our expert panel to discuss today's FIA Dialogues subject, wellness and immunity, and know what we eat and drink can strengthen our immune systems. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Yvonne. Welcome now to our panel discussion on wellness. Joining us today, Simone Frey from the Nutrition Hub, Mun-Yew Wong from Imagene Labs, and Anand Sundaresan from DSM. Well, let's start, Mun-Yew, with you. What do you think, if we look back to the days before COVID-19, were the ways that people managed their immune health? What was happening pre-COVID-19?
I think what is happening pre and what is happening currently in COVID-19 is there's a lot more interest, there's a lot more focus in terms of interest in immune health. I think this has been seen in many surveys. For instance, in the Nelson survey in April 2020, looking at vitamins to increase your immunity was the top 6 concept or idea that consumers are looking at. But what is more interesting about that is that beyond COVID-19, the next 12 months, 4 out of 5 people are looking to purchase vitamin supplements even from that onwards. So what I think is that what is happening pre has been a certain level, but the COVID-19 has certainly brought immunity right up to the fore, and I think the next 12 months to 24 months, as this continue to burn through the world and the pandemic continues, I think people will continue to change their behavior. They may enhance it, but it may sustain what is currently happening.
So, Simone, from your point of view, do you see anything similar or different? Obviously, a lot of interest in the immune products.
Well, in general, we observe that there is a big interest in nutrition, in prevention, in well-being. So before COVID-19 occurred, if you look at the 12 mega trends that will be with us for the next 20 to 30 years, 3 of them are very closely connected to nutrition and wellness. That's health, a deep interest of being healthy, it's sustainability, and it is personalization. So what means health? It's an increase in the demand of products that support being healthy. It can be a health shot, it includes supplements, it includes a healthy diet, it includes maybe also fasting. And when it comes to the other mega trend, personalization, then it's about knowing what's happening in my body. Self-optimization is a big trend as well. So we see that there's a huge interest in the topic of nutrition and being healthy, living a healthy and happy life.
And Anand, from the DSM perspective, what do you see as the changing behaviours?
There was already, I would say, a growing awareness about the role of nutrition, about the role of essential micronutrients and general nutrition and general health. If you look at it from a baseline and a trend over the last few years, there's definitely been a greater awareness about the role of nutrition, right, which has been due to various structural reasons, such as the democratization of data, of information. So if you can Google something online about the role of any micronutrient, you'll get tons of information. A lot of the costs, if you think of it as the diagnostic costs that you see, those have really trended down because of a lot of the structural impediments to the scalability of those kind of going away. I think Simone talked about personalization. That's another emerging trend. So there's already a growing awareness, and perhaps now in the current situation, as Mun-Yew mentioned, there's definitely an even a higher heightened awareness, and from awareness moving to intent, moving then to execution, and people are really taking action about the role that effective micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, and probiotics, prebiotics have a demonstrable impact on one's immunity. So I see that trend actually accelerating in this current pandemic, and perhaps staying at a higher level in terms of the new trend line post-COVID.
Yes, I would like to add to this that this interest in nutrition science, we see this also, or nutrition in the general public is also driven by the evidence, the growing body of evidence we see in nutrition science. So 200 years ago, nutrition started in a way when we found out there are calories and our bodies need calories. And it's only 100 years ago that we found out about vitamins and minerals and their roles. And if you look at what's happening today and how consumers perceive this topic, it's all about longevity, self-optimization. Plus, if you look at the numbers of scientific studies with the keyword nutrition that have been published in 1930, so around 100 years ago, this was in 1930, 25 publications. 100 years later, in 19, it was 13,000. So the body of evidence is also increasing, and this is the reason also why it contributes to this consumers being interested in that topic, doing their own research through the internet, and working on self-optimization to live a healthy and happy life.
So, Mun-Yew, enormous consumer interest in nutrition, but around the world, consumers are facing enormous pressures and enormous uncertainty over jobs, income, personal health. Do you believe people will still have a desire to manage their immune health once this crisis is all over?
I think absolutely, because this COVID once in a 100-year event, right, is really driving a lot of different thinking and different thoughts in what's current state. And if you believe that what is data out there, that the COVID, looking at where the vaccination is coming on, if we burn on for another 1 to 2 years, I think the next 1 or 2 years is where people, when they are baked into their habits, into thinking about nutrition, about health, about wellness, and how to get yourself healthy and not to get infected. I think this sort of habit that comes in will probably be able to be sustained way beyond that 2 or 3 years that is going to be where this pandemic will continue.
Well, that's encouraging because, of course, that's encouraging because the World Health Organization has warned that it could last for 5 years or more.
Yeah. And just to add, right, to the body of evidences, beyond just the scientific papers, there was just a recent Singapore study, just to cite, is published in Med Archive just about a few days ago, where they actually are treating patients in a hospital with 3 different vitamin supplements: B12, magnesium, and vitamin D. And it's a small study, 46 patients, but they find that those people that are on the vitamin supplements has much less critical progression of their disease in hospital. That means they don't go to they don't have less incidence of ICU or needing ventilation, mechanical ventilation. So while it's small, it is actually significant enough to say for them to come out with a paper to do that. And this is just a very simple supplementation of 3 very core vitamins that are, widely available and also low cost as well.
Anand, how can other aspects of health and wellness interplay with immunity?
Sure. So a lot of, let's call it modifiable behaviors that we engage in, right? Whether it's in terms of sleep, in terms of environmental factors, pollution being one, stress being others. I think they all have an interplay and an influence on overall immunity. But I think equally importantly are other things that we can do as an industry or as the broader public and private workplace is what we can do to further increase the awareness of immunity, even in things like workplace immunity. So at DSM, just to give you one example, we actually launched an initiative where we went around with all the 25,000 employees that we have globally to actually engage them through webinars, to provide greater awareness about the role of nutrition, about the role of micronutrient supplementation to improve their immunity, and also provided them a 2-month supply of essential vitamins to improve their immunity levels and also for their loved ones for about 2 months. And I see that even in the public space, governments, others also increasing and talking more about the role of fortification as an example for staple foods. And that I see that also increasing over the next few years.
Simone, how is Nutrition Hub, your company, communicating the significance of immune health to the whole industry? How's it doing that?
Yeah, we are driven by our community, and our community is the largest nutrition expert community in Europe. So we work with nutrition expert scientists to increase their visibility and spread messages. So we work with influencers who are nutrition experts and make sure that there are less myths out there and more evidence communicated, especially on social media.
Thank you. Mun-Yew, how do genetics influence our ability to manage immune health? Genetics.
So there are actually quite a number of immunity-related vitamin and vitamin supplements that are related to genetics simply by the fact that certain genetics may drive certain people to have certain deficiencies. For instance, in the area of vitamin B12, vitamin magnesium, zinc, selenium, certain genes may actually predispose you to deficiencies in these areas. And at Imagene Labs, we actually take it one step further. Our research has shown that not only do genes influence the potential of you being deficient in certain vitamins or supplements, we actually go beyond that to look at the difference in the ethnicity of influencing such conditions. Just to give a very simple example, in the area of, for instance, the vitamin B12, I just spoke about it, right? In Europeans, there are about 25% of people, based on our data set, that are high risk of vitamin B12 deficiency. This is European descent, but in the area of East Asians, that's about 13%. So it's about half of that compared to Europeans. So what does it mean to an individual who knows or who doesn't know about this? It means that once you know your predisposition, you may be able to start watching out for potential risk of deficiencies in that particular few vitamin supplements that you are in. And for instance, vitamin B12, you can actually check your serum B12 levels to see whether you're actually deficient. And then of course you could speak to your health provider to see whether between the genetics and your serum levels, do you need supplementation or not. And this is becoming a lot more important, especially now with COVID-19 and the pandemic that's happening.
Anand, a question for you on micronutrients. What micronutrients are now gaining traction to manage immune health?
Sure. So if you look at if you put it into different buckets and look at it in terms of vitamins, you look at definitely an increase in the awareness and also the usage and consumption of vitamin C, which is a very effective antioxidant, but it also accumulates in white blood cells, which are important for fighting off any pathogen. vitamin D, which also has a demonstrable influence and impact in improving your immunity, vitamin B6, which has a very beneficial impact on your nervous system, and of course a lot of the other minerals, zinc, selenium, iron, as well as your EPAs and DHAs. And there's a body of scientific knowledge and study which shows that it actually has a very beneficial impact on reducing inflammation, as an example. So I would say all these three, and then combine it with the newer trends with the accumulating body of knowledge and the use of probiotics and prebiotics in ensuring a healthy gut health. That has also had a bigger influence, if you will.
I'd like to wrap up in a moment by asking each of you your thoughts on how business will change for you because of COVID-19. But first, let's go around the panel and find out from each of you what you're looking forward to most. What excites you most over the next 12 months? Maybe starting with you, Simone. When you think ahead for the next 12 months, what excites you most?
Well, first of all, what's really interesting and what I like is to see, if you go on Google Trends and you search for terms like immune system or immunity, also vitamin, keywords like this, you can see that there is a huge increase, some of them a tenfold increase from mid February or beginning of the year to when there was COVID-19 occurrence. So that means that people are really, really interested and in this topic and thinking about their health and what makes them healthy. And what I find exciting is that we see two directions and maybe changing also definition of wellness. On the one hand, wellness is about prevention, self-optimization, taking supplements. That's one part. We see also that there was an increase in sales of these products. And on the other hand, wellness is also now, due to the lockdown, associated with cooking at home, being with the family, enjoying being at home and taking time for cooking and baking and maybe having a snack. So mindfulness is increasing or has increased or seems to increase. And I think this is a very good direction we're heading to.
Thank you. Anand, from your perspective, what excites you about the next 12 months? Will you be doing more cooking at home?
Well, on a personal basis, yes, because I also need to control my diet, and it's perhaps a good way to do that. I'll perhaps rephrase it in terms of a prediction as well as what I'm really looking forward to. The prediction, I believe, is that immunity, along with safe distancing and washing your hands or using personal hygiene, immunity will be the third leg of the stool, which is extremely important in terms of coming out of this pandemic. I think there's going to be an increasing awareness of that. In terms of what I'm excited about is what I think a lot of social economists, public policy planning, people have been talking about is a dollar investment in nutrition, whether it's improving micronutrient deficiencies, if it's addressing hidden hunger, has a $16 impact in terms of your better social outcomes, in terms of preventing malnutrition, in terms of preventing stunting, in terms of preventing a lot of the early nutritional deficiencies that we experience, especially in Asia. And I think progressively, there is going to be more and more awareness about the role that nutrition plays in addressing many of these, these barriers that disproportionately impact the lower income populations, especially here in Asia. And I'm really excited about that.
And Mun-Yew, when you look ahead for the next 12 months, what are the things that are really going to excite you, do you think?
I think similar to what Simone and Anand has said, I think the whole area of immunity related to micronutrients, related to food, related to the other parts that can actually improve immunity, like sleep and exercise. I think this is all getting up into the fore where people are realizing that whatever they do in their lifestyle actually affects your health and finally your immunity. I think that's one very important part that excites me. But I think the other part is also where the healthcare professionals, right, doctors, nutritionists, they're also getting a lot into the picture right now. We're starting to get a lot of interest in what we do. As a company, we do personalization based on genetics. So we're getting to see a lot of impact and a lot of interest from traditional doctors, which don't really have very much interest in this area. Now suddenly waking up to the fact that immunity is boosted by nutrients and food and whatever you take, and of course the rest of what I just mentioned, and then actually looking to use such services for their patients to actually get them to be healthier so that they don't fall sick.
Well, let's wrap up the day now, as I mentioned before, with some closing comments about how COVID-19 is and will continue to change your businesses. And I know we've touched upon this already, but maybe we could just summarize about your expectations for the impact, the continued impact of COVID-19. And starting perhaps with you, Anand.
Sure. So we are already seeing a migration or a change or an evolution, rather, is a more accurate word, in terms of the business model. So a lot of our companies, our customers, and as we look ahead into even the consumer space, we see a growing trend towards using e-commerce to make purchases, and I think that trend is going to continue. In terms of public policy planning, I definitely think the role of fortification of staple food, the awareness, and also the urgency to act on it, I definitely see that also increasing once we get through the pandemic. And lastly, like the other panelists mentioned, the role of immunity as a very important aspect of overall health is also going to remain. And companies which participate in doing that using science, using good science-based initiatives are definitely going to prosper.
Simone, what's the response from you when you look ahead? What impact are you expecting from COVID-19 on your business?
Well, our business is providing access to nutrition experts, to healthcare professionals, to companies and organizations, raising their visibility. Why do we do that? Because we observe consumers that they want to know more. They are looking for information. They're using the internet. They're using social media. And very often they get information that is not evidence-based and might be a risk for their health. So we see right now more and more companies approaching us and asking for specific experts that are experts for gut health, for example, immunity, or women's health, to work with them in innovation processes, in marketing projects, or other communication projects.
And finally, let's get the view from Imagene Labs. Mun-Yew, what's your forecast? What are you expecting the impact to be long-term from COVID-19 on your business?
I think as what Anand and Simone said, I think where consumers are now demanding more information, and of course in the big mega trend of personalization, where they want to know more about themselves and where they are in terms of their own health and wellness cycle, I think this is going to be a good future for Imagene Labs in terms of personalization, come out with products that consumers can actually believe in and can actually believe in recommending it even to their own friends and families. So we're actually pretty positive and about it.
So the good news is plenty of consumer interest and hopefully continued consumer demand. A big thank you to all the panelists today for your insights, and good luck in the months ahead as you take on the opportunities in front of you. And that's it from us. Thank you. Back to you now, Yvonne.
Thank you to all our panelists. Shortly, it'll be time for our live Q&A session. You can send us your questions on wellness and immunity by typing directly into the chat box on the right-hand side of the YouTube live stream. The moderator for this session is Thomas Hayes, Global Food Technology and Innovation Analyst with Lux Research. Over to you, Thomas.
Thanks, Yvonne, and greetings, everyone, and welcome to our panel on a very timely topic, wellness and immunity. My name is Tommy Hayes, and I'm a Global Food Technology and Innovation Analyst from Lux Research. I'm joined today by Angelika de Bree, Global Nutrition Director for Foods and Refreshment categories at Unilever. Anand Sundaresan, Regional Vice President of Human Health and Nutrition at DSM. And last but not least, Simone Frey, founder of Nutrition Hub. So where I first really want to unpack things is around consumer behaviors, because at the end of the day, consumers are who we have to answer to. So Anand, I'd like to start with you on this one, because I really liked how you described the consumer journey in 3 steps in the pre-recorded video. First, awareness, then intent, then lastly, execution. But going from intent to execution is quite difficult. And even if a consumer is able to get to that 3rd step, having sustained execution of a dietary and lifestyle regimen is even more difficult. So if you could share, how is a company like DSM, helping consumers on that front?
Sure. Thank you, Tommy. It definitely requires a conscious decision by the consumer to basically employ this as a lifestyle change, right? I mean, everyone is knowledgeable that a healthy diet is extremely important for a healthy immune system, for a normal well-being. But to make that jump into from intent to execution does require what I call a nudge. So the first part of it is really, hey, it's good for you, right? There is a preponderance of scientific evidence, peer-reviewed scientific evidence, that basically highlights the role that healthy diet, as well as supplementation with key micronutrients, whether it's vitamins, lipids, omegas, can have a very beneficial impact on boosting your immunity system as well as improving your well-being. So the first part is it's good for you. The second part is it's easy for you to do. So this is where, in addition to a healthy diet, you also have nutritional supplementation. And with the access now of nutritional supplements through various channels, that's also become easy to do. The third part is, okay, it's good for you, it's easy to do, and the third part is it tastes good or it feels good. And that's where we see a lot of our customers, so the brand owners, working with the consumers, also incorporating into what you would consider very good nutrient density foods like ready-made yogurts, instant cereals, instant noodles, and so on, to actually fortify them with essential key micronutrients. So if you look through the trifecta effect of ensuring a consumer understands all the key benefits, that it's good for you, it actually is easy to do, and the third part is it actually feels and tastes good, then you can really get that movement towards a consumer doing it. And the last part, now looking beyond just the consumer, is the broader society, right? And that's where I think public, as well as private companies and businesses have a big role to play in terms of ensuring that the broader society, the workforce, the community understands the role that proper nutrition, proper health, really has an impact. Just as a data point, there was a recent report from the Chatham House, which basically laid out the cost to many businesses, especially in low and middle income countries. So the lack of proper nutrition, the micronutrient deficiencies can have an impact of as much as $850 billion, roughly 3% of the GDP. And as DSM is a purpose-led, performance-led company, one of the things that we are also spearheading is how do we incorporate this information, nutritional information, into workplace. So workplace nutrition is a very important role to that. And we have some solutions that we're developing in terms of both highlighting the awareness, but also facilitating that ease, not just to our employees and workforce, but also to other companies that may be interested.
Oh, that's great, Anand. Okay, so it has to be good for you, easy to implement, and taste good as well. Simone, what about your thoughts in terms of, how do we increase compliance for some of these, dietary lifestyles that support wellness and immunity?
Well, I believe, first of all, we need to understand how the consumer feels during this crisis, and the consumers feel anxious and disoriented. And if you look at, there was just recently published a report from McKinsey about the behavior of the Chinese population during the escalation phase, the lockdown, and adapting to the new normal. And in the escalation phase, the consumer is interested to buy essential goods, while during the lockdown, they are looking for groceries, pharmaceuticals, or they bought more groceries by 11%, 20% pharmaceuticals increase, and 40%, and I think this is important for this session, a 40% increase in immunity-oriented products. Mm-hmm. Now the situation is that consumers have to adapt to the new normal. So they know before Corona, this is far away. So there is a new normal. And we see that consumers are interested in 4 key product types. The most important for this session is prevention. So they want to have a stock at home for vitamins, for supplements. And although they know that this does not prevent COVID-19, it helps to maintain overall immunity. And this means that this might be part of a new consumer regimen. So now, coming back, how do we increase compliance? We have to understand that they are anxious and disoriented, but they want to have this stock of products at home, and consumers are looking for products that deliver nutrition to them. So comfort food and supplements. And at the same time, to increase compliance, they are looking for reliable sources. I think this is the most important. Reliable sources they can trust, products they can trust. There is economic uncertainty, and they have to decide which product am I going to purchase, which product is going to help me and deliver what I am looking for. So this is understanding the needs and then being very clear about what are the communication channels to address what the consumer is looking for.
Yeah, 100% agree, because I mean, a lot of the products that consumers need are out there, but it's about, matching the product to the consumer, making sure that they're reached to the consumer. So now this is, I want to take a little bit of a step back, because, we can't look at immune health in isolation, in and of itself. There is this interplay between immune health and underlying chronic conditions. And I think, COVID has really shown that with diabetes and obesity in particular. So Angelika, perhaps I can start with you on this one. How is a large CPG company like Unilever, rethinking nutrition and immune health in this broadened sense?
Yeah, thank you, Tommy, for that question. I think it's a really interesting one, because what we see is that for over a couple of decades, I think we're putting a lot of effort into making sure that our products all move into a healthier space. And so that means in terms of, less sugar, less salt, less of the bad fat. And even though this has been always part of the DNA of Unilever, we found it quite a challenge to communicate that to consumers. I think taste was the most important thing, whereas now what we see with COVID, and that's really one of the positive elements that for me has come out of this pandemic crisis, is that people are far more interested into messages about health, functional claims, all sorts of things that cue health or healthiness and well-being. And this is definitely something that we now can bank on. So more than the vast majority of our portfolio is in line with WHO guidance with respects to salt levels, salt and fat levels. And now if we actually have the opportunity to highlight some of the positives there, this makes a super credible story. So this is something that I'm hoping and I'm foreseeing actually, that we have entered a zeitgeist of more susceptibility and openness of consumers for health messages. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, and Anand, coming from a large ingredient supplier that's supplying to these CPGs, what's your take on kind of immune health in this broadened sense?
Sure. So I think as Angelika, eloquently described, there's a growing awareness about going towards a more healthy side of things, right? Reformulating, taking away salt, sugar, incorporating more micronutrients. So that aspect is definitely going on quite a bit, and I can foresee the per capita consumption of these essential micronutrients and more generally healthier diets actually increasing quite a bit, because in Asia is an anomaly in many ways, because we have the largest population of malnourished children as well as adults, but also the highest increase in growth rates of obesity. So obviously, the fact that proper nutrition as well as a proper diet supplemented by essential immune enhancing nutritional ingredients has a key role to play. I'd like to touch on one topic which I think we are working on, and we're trying to bring it to scale, is how do we address the point that if indeed micronutrients play a role in enhancing immunity, and that immunity does help in either slowing or in reducing the risk of novel infections or non-communicable diseases, how do we make sure that these solutions target the vulnerable low-income populations that we have in Asia Pacific? So the areas that we are working on, apart from more the nutritional supplement side, is also on fortification of staple foods, so fortification of rice, lentils, wheat, flour, working with other organizations like FAO, WHO, to really make sure that as a population as a whole, we not just use this present crisis as a way to increase awareness, but more broader, longer term, the benefits, the socioeconomic benefits of enhanced nutrition and hence better production against immunity. I mean, it's amazing in terms of the socioeconomic benefits that one has in terms of reducing malnutrition, in terms of reducing improving your immunity. So I think those are the essential areas that we see also playing out apart from the greater awareness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, Angelika?
Yeah, I wanted to build on that, because I think that what this crisis has shown us as well is that many people have started to stock up all sorts of products that are often denominated as processed foods. So, for example, if you would take a fortified pot noodle, this is something that a packaged food that has undergone some processing, and there seems to be quite some negativity about the degree of processing and potential health, whereas fortification is a very positive way of processing foods that actually in a very relatively cheap manner offers a lot of positive micronutrients, macronutrients to consumers. So I think one of my wishes has been that this general connotation that is relatively negative around processed foods is actually moving to a far more positive space, because you see that in times of crisis relief, people actually default to, the canned soups, the packaged soups, the pot noodle type of things. And I think it's just not all negative. It's actually, there's a lot of positive to that can be attributed to these products as well.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, and it comes down to communicating that benefit of processing to the consumer and letting them experience that. So kind of building off that tangent a little bit in terms of communicating with consumers, because everything that we've discussed today does have to be within the bounds of regulation, which is especially tricky when the ultimate goal of immune health is to prevent a disease, which Simone did touch on. And Simone, let's actually, I'll go to you on this one. With this in mind, I'd be curious to hear your perspective on this, given the nature of your work. How does your network of nutritionists ensure to communicate within the bounds of regulation? And do you find those bounds to be restrictive at all? Do you find those the regulation to actually be a benefit to you? What's your perception there?
Yeah, very important question. Why is that? If what we observe very often is that there is a big gap between what is discussed within the industry, but what is also discussed among researchers in the food and nutrition space. And very often the information doesn't actually reach the consumer. So about us, Nutrition Hub is the largest community for nutrition experts in Europe. We've been established by nutrition experts, and we bring together startups, industries, and the experts. Why? Because the nutrition experts are actually the key opinion leaders influencing influencers and by this influencing the general public. So what happens very often, there is common agreement, for example, about the effect of fortified food, but the general public doesn't know about it, or about the quality about a specific product. So what we see also is that it's very important that real persons communicate. There's a study from Nielsen, and it's nothing new, but 92% of consumers trust a personal recommendation, a personal information more than a commercial ad or information that is branded. And secondly, that is also a report from McKinsey, excuse me, it's in the morning here in Germany. Consumers state that the recommendations of healthcare professionals, of experts in a field, have become even more important than before COVID-19. And this is a big opportunity to become this reliable partner, and where we see the nutrition experts, the food experts, to be the key opinion leaders. So the regulation, coming back to your question, for us, the boundaries are not challenging, because we communicate to the key opinion leaders. They review the information and they make their own analysis of that information and then communicate to influencers or the general public.
Fantastic. And Angelika, I'd like to round out with you on this one, especially in terms of, labeling, on food and beverage products. How are we able to communicate, claims of wellness and immunity?
Yeah, so we have a clear claims framework in place. So we often stick with the type of regulation that is most strict, and in this case, we often look at the European foods regulation, so from EFSA, where roughly, for example, if you would take vitamins and minerals, we say that you can only be truthful and meaningful to consumers if you at least deliver about 15% of the recommended daily allowance for a certain vitamin or mineral in a portion. So that's something that actually has a nutritional impact. And we stick to that. And of course, we always stick to local regulation as well. But if the local regulation is slightly too lenient, then then actually the default scenario of delivering at least 15% of your recommended daily allowance in order for it to be a meaningful amount of micronutrients and minerals. And we also stick to the type of terminology that EFSA is recommending. So we would rarely speak about boosting immunity, even though that is a terminology that consumers really like and sort of intuitively understand. But in many places around the world, we can't say that. And that's why you will always see us talking about supporting immunity. And that's exactly how what you will see appear on our packs.
Great. Okay, we do have some questions from the audience that have been building off what we've been talking about so far. So Anand, I'd like to start with you. How vital do you see organic food to enhancing wellness and immunity and at affordable prices? How do you see the organic trend growing? You talked about crops earlier, so putting that in the context of organic.
Sure. I'm not an expert in organic, but we do see an increasing trend, awareness and adoption in terms of organic food. If I could just make that, the landscape a little bigger, I would say more the plant-based protein kind of area. There are a lot of these plant-based solutions which are also picking up a lot of interest as a complement to other sources of protein, but also other areas of organic food, nutrition industry. So longer term, I do see that this will have a pretty big impact in terms of the way we educate ourselves about the benefits of organic food, larger in terms of plant-based solutions that help us in achieving better nutritional outcomes. So I see this as a positive trend going forward. And economics-wise, as demand and supply kind of start equilibrating, costs also come down.
Fantastic. Okay, and actually kind of building off plant-based diets, maybe Angelika, you can field this one. How do you see the trend for plant-based diets, foods growing across Asia Pacific, and will this be a trend in near future in relation with wellness?
Yeah, I definitely think so. If you listen to the experts around nutrition and immunity, the people like Professor Calder, they say, a plant-based diet, a mainly plant-based diet substituted with a bit of animal-based products such as dairy and oily fish should deliver all the nutrients for an optimal immune system. And we already saw that before COVID-19. We had already called out plant-based eating in our strategy, and we see actually with brands like the Vegetarian Butcher that we have, and then we are rolling that out across the globe, that a massive spike of that of those types of products. So people really wanting to move to different type of products that are a good alternative for meat. The same we see for actually across our entire portfolio. So vegan ice creams, for example, or vegan mayonnaises. There's a lot of consumer interest in that, and we're doing a lot to inspire people to eat more diverse, more plant-based through offering these products. But not only that, also through recipes. We've got a really inspiring program which is called our Future 50 Foods program that is done by our Knorr brand together with the World Wildlife Fund. So we see that actually we can make a huge impact with helping people to eat more plant-based, and it's not only good for their health and their immune system, but also better for the planet.
Fantastic. We are going to switch gears a little bit back to Anand. I think you actually talked about some of these aspects in the pre-recorded video, but maybe you can expand upon them further. What are some functional ingredients of increasing popularity that you're finding food manufacturers are leveraging and can leverage going forward that boost wellness and immunity?
It seems like a perfect plug for me to tout all the
yeah, exactly.
but I'll resist from that. Just broadly speaking, right? I mean, if you look at the whole working from home in terms of the changes in our habits, and if you're like me, I mean, binge watching Netflix, at least the initial 1 month, was something that I started doing. So a lot of awareness now about the effect of eye health, of the importance of eye health as we kind of move away from working in the office, working at home, and staring in front of the computer. That has become a very important area for us with our customers, and we're working to put forth our science-based evidences to say how lutein, as an example, is an excellent source to actually improve eye health. The other aspects, as it comes to not just the COVID-related pandemic concerns, but more generally is about blood flow and circulation. So we have some solutions there that we're also seeing an increased adoption amongst brand owners, MLM, multi-level media marketing companies, to actually utilize some of our solutions towards healthier blood flow and circulation. Last but not the least, in Asia specifically, I mean, DSM is in the preventive space, not in the curative space, but the increased awareness about the role of diabetes, or even if you take a step ahead, pre-diabetes, right? And the effect of actually modulating your blood sugar and doing it naturally. We have some solutions, again, based on science, which our consumers are also seeing, our customers and hence the consumers are also seeing an increased interest. So net, there are some secular changes in terms of more effectively managing your, getting into those states in terms of pre-diabetes, in terms of healthier blood flow, but also some which are more lifestyle related in terms of eye health that we see overall.
Okay, now I want to move back to whole foods. So Simone, are there any studies showing the current trend of consumption for certain food types, whether that be animal proteins or plant-based, that can help consumers boost wellness and immunity?
Actually, I would like to give this question to Angelika, because I think you were just mentioning a study before.
Yeah, I think, let me just refer back to this wonderful study or this wonderful review that Professor Calder did on nutrition and health. I'm not sure whether, because your question was really very specific, right? On is there any...
Yeah, whole foods.
Yeah, so I think the general consensus also in his recent review is plant-based. A diet mainly consisting of plant-based foods substituted with a little bit of oily fish and dairy. That should deliver everything for an optimal immune system.
Great. Okay, and we have an interesting one here from Mohammed for you once again, Angelika. In this pandemic, there's been a significant towards wellness and immunity food. Will you see any significant difference in customer behaviors after the pandemic has concluded?
Well, we think that some of the trends are here to stay, but definitely we've seen across the globe different types of behavior in terms of what people are doing to make sure that their immune system is in the most optimal shape. So in the US, we see lots of people getting sort of defaulting to vitamin supplements. In Brazil, they go for vitamin C rich foods that they know. In Japan, there's a tendency to move towards yogurts that are very popular to boost your immune system. In China, Japan, Thailand, and India, we see actually that people love to go back to the traditional Ayurvedic type of treatments of their own health and wellness, as well as also foods that they think are nutritious and supplements. So it's
I think that's a perfect segue to the next one, actually. And this is for Anand. How similar or different are the health and immunity trends for this region, being Asia Pacific, as compared to other parts of the world?
I think Angelika touched on this. I think broader, the awareness of immunity, the roles of vitamins, minerals, definitely has been the first order effect, as you can see. But I also think there is the beginning of innovation to actually satisfy some of the unique needs of this continent, or the larger continent. I'll give you just one particular example. India is primarily a vegetarian or a plant-based food consuming society, right? So in the years past, things like omegas, which are basically from fish-derived sources, we know that omegas are extremely good for your brain health and also for preventing inflammation. What it has also helped us spur some of our innovation that we have been working on to bring into the marketplace based on plant-based or algae-based oils, omega-3 oils. So I think the trend that you see in different communities, or in fact micro-segmented populations in Asia with their unique lifestyles, habits, will also spur innovation for companies like DSM and others in terms of fulfilling them. And I think that's going to be also one of the outcomes of this event, if you will.
Fantastic. And here I have a question from HL to Simone. How could packaged snacks and bakery companies ride on the home baking and wellness trends to make products healthier? How can they use home baking as a source of inspiration?
Well, I'll try to answer. I'm not a baking specialist, but what we see is that it has to follow the mega trends that are out there. This is health, personalization, and sustainability. And a lot when it comes to baking is also related to clean label products, making sure that there are natural products in there, that there are organic ingredients, from organic sources. And another thing is, again, about communication, making sure that the consumer or the user knows where the ingredients come from, and that this is very transparently communicated by the brand or the company.
Great. Okay. And now we have one from Valerie for Angelika. Is there any consumer behavior data on consumer preferences for choosing products related to immunity during the pandemic?
Yeah, no, definitely. We see that, big trends are, of course, anything that cues immunity, health. Besides the other element that has also been discussed in this panel is what we call cocooning. So being more in home, having to come up with an idea to make your own breakfast, your own lunch, your own dinner. So we see actually from a nutrition and health point of view that those are massive trends that we need to address in a very responsible manner, and help people continuously to inspire them. So just to highlight one, we do so much in the space of the staycation inspiration at the moment, where we know that people can't all go and travel everywhere what they would normally otherwise do, and therefore what can you do with giving people some pointers on an exciting recipe that is healthy, delivers you the micronutrients that you need for your immune support at the same time. So yes, so cocooning, health and well-being, immunity, big trends.
Yeah. Fantastic. And I don't know about you all, but I have been baking a lot at home, and now I have all this time, and we have a question specific to flour fortification. This is the last question, and this will go to you, Anand. What micronutrient can you recommend for flour fortification?
We have a whole host of, I'm not a technical person, but we have a whole host of vitamins and micronutrients that we have, which basically is actually effective right now in countries like Indonesia. And I'll be happy to get in touch with you and put you in touch with our technical team. So, I give you effective advice. If I could just maybe bridge to just add one more point to the previous question that was asked about consumer preferences or behaviors. Is that okay, Tommy?
Yeah, yes, sure.
I think one of the areas that we are also seeing is a growing preference of consumers or an interest in terms of them wanting who the suppliers are in terms of quality, traceability, and sustainability. So that's one of the growing consumer preferences also, not just in terms of taking a specific vitamin or a micronutrient, but also in terms of the overall supply chain, the sustainability perspective, because people do have some time to ponder and think about the effect of these things during this pandemic. So that's one of the things we've seen. But to the flour fortification, I would love to kind of get in touch with you. If you could shoot me an email, I'll be happy to put you in touch with the people.
Great. Well, that is all the time that we have for today. I want to thank my panelists. Thank you very much for your time and insights. And now I will hand it back to Yvonne.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you for all your questions. I hope you enjoyed both of today's editions of FIA Dialogues. Tomorrow, we bring you more insights and panel sessions at 10 a.m., and the subject will be CRISPR and the role of new technologies in ensuring our food security. In the afternoon at 2, join us for the Proteins Challenge and accelerating innovation in agri-tech. You'll again have the chance to ask questions during our live Q&A sessions. And please make a note in your calendar to join me again for the launch of FIA TV's Food for the Future program on August 12. So until I see you tomorrow at 10, take care and goodbye for now.